So let's begin. We're up to the second paragraph, Eis Gimel. So what did he say till now? Let's negate to the flow of the Maimer. What's negate is, we won't repeat the questions on the original pasuk, only to say that the pasuk in which the Maimer is based, called Hanikra B'Shmi U'Lechvedi Barosiv Yitzartiv Afasisiv. So the Targum Yonason explains this pasuk, how it is a hemshech to the previous psukim. The previous psukim talk about how not one Jew will remain in Golus. Very beautiful words from Yeshaya describing how Hashem will gather in every Yid. And the next pasuk is called Hanikra B'Shmi. All who are called by my name, not called upon my name, all are called, all whom my name is called upon them, more literally. So the Targum Yonason said that is saying that all of the above, the ingathering and so on, is b'schus your fathers and tzaddikim, the others and the tzaddikim, who my name was called upon them. So Targum Yonason continues, I created them for my glory. The shayla of the Maimer was, why is this negaya here? No, the question was not so much the glory, that later too. Yeah, what's negaya the kvedi? Yeah, that's one of the questions. Why my glory? Many ways of God to refer to himself. Why kovet dafke, and why also are they described as those whose name is called, my name is called upon them. Again, Shem and kovet. That's the question. Why is that negaya? And the Targum Yonason added also the final words, afasisiv. He seems to teach that Yetzartiv, I formed him, means I established the Yid, not he does, seems he does. I established the Yidden in Golus. They endured, survived Golus in the schus of Kol Nikra B'Shmi. And indeed I made miracles for them. Afasisiv means indeed I made miracles during Golus. The B'Shaila was talking about Gula now. Why is it important to say that in Golus there are miracles? You want to say in the schus of whom Gula comes, okay. It comes b'schus Kol Nikra B'Shmi. And in their schus we endured. Why add also it's critical to add even miracles with them. Point is, we got to Geula, and I'm with you, Al Tira Ki Itcha Ani, and we're going out of Golus. Why are we emphasizing what happened in Golus and adding this detail that in Golus there are miracles along the way in schus of the Ovis? Again, there's simple answers to this too, but he's asking, he's going to give us the answer to B'Pnimi Yoni. So in order to understand all of that, he introduced the pasuk from the parsha, Mereish Surim Berenu, Migvois Ashurenu. So Bilam is saying that Yidden, Rashi says they are as strong as mountains and valleys, immutable. But the Medrash and the Zohar says that the mountains and valleys refer to the Ovos and the Imois, and that's where the strength comes from. Now this he brings behemshech to the taich of the Targum Yonason called Nikra B'Shmi, that Geula comes in schus of the Ovos. He brought another Medrash, another Zohar killed in his Zibon Medalig Alahorim Mekapetz Alagvois, again a reference to mountains and hills. Again, the Zohar there says it's referring to the Ovos and the Imois. And this is a whole akadoma. This is critical. This pasuk is the opening akadoma, everything which follows, all of the brachas and the nevuos of the Geula which follow. As the Zohar notes that I can't curse them because they're protected from all sides. The Ovos and the Imois. And instead, therefore, I'm compelled to give bracha. So much so the greatest bracha and the vua of Darach Keichav Miyakov, come Shevet Yisrael, referring to Mashiach. To understand all of this, the Rebbe established in the next ois that when we speak about Rosh Tzurim and Gevois, the mountains and the valleys, the Avos and the Imois, we don't just speak in general terms that Klal Yisrael, Klolos Ha'umah, the general people, have a protected or rooted or connected to the Avos and the Imois, but rather it refers to every Yid specifically. This is a big diak of the Maimon. The Maimon began that way, that no Jew remains out of Golos, and the insistence that all we speak of, I'm going to talk about in the Maimon, but applies to every Yid. And he brings an interesting raya. Everything is a raya in Nigla. Someone just, this is Chazar of it. Darach Keichav mi Yaakov. So on one hand it goes, a star will shoot forth from Yaakov, referring to Mashiach. But then we see buried, as it were, in the Gemara in Yerushalmi, that refers to every Yid, not just every Yid, but a Jew who is under the control. More than that, the story there is, if you recall, that the Gemara there brings a whole lot of stories where people came to look it up. So the same Amora or different Amoraim with dreams, and their dreams were interpreted. So someone came, he wasn't Jewish, and he came and he said, seems from the story, he heard he was a dream interpreter, so he wanted to understand. He dreamt he swallowed a star. And so the interpretation was he'd killed a Yid. And that's what he had done. And he brings the posik there, because Darach Keichav Miyakov, a Yid is called a star. What do we see from here? That Darach Keichav Miyakov goes on Mashiach, and on every Yid, not just on a Yid, but a Yid that's Achman Litzlan, the lowest level, that the Ruchnius in Golus, so much so that he was murdered. If it doesn't go into the Pratim at all, doesn't want to tell the story, but just says that this Yerushalmi goes on every Yid, even a Matzav that goes a Shlita on him, has control over him. Stops it, the story there. All to say that everything in the Psukim here of Bilam, and then he said the Pashat the Pshat, and now the Raya that it goes on every Yid. Anybody wants to volunteer? What's the hechrech that he brings in the middle of that ois? Middle of ois, the second paragraph of ois base. Interesting hechrech. We must conclude that it's referring, everything Bilam is saying is referring to every Yid, not just the people as a whole. That they're protected, they're meritorious, they have these milas. What's the raya? Who wants to tell me? The hechrech. Everybody's invited to say. No? Giving your hand. The edge of the people.
That's what Bilam was looking at?
He was looking even.
Right, so even if they were in the process of Keichav.
But even in the Pasha Begashmi, it's one or two, one Jew.
Right.
He kept one opening, the tiniest opening to find criticism.
Would be not the best of the best.
Yeah, the edge of the people, meaning the fringe, literally, the fringe Jew. He's looking. Erget's wound. That was word. In the Yiddish, see the ones who wrote the Maimon put this in Yiddish because this is an unusual expression, and the whole context of the Maimon here. The Rebbe is again insistence that everything we speak of, Geula and the brachas, is shaykh to every single Jew. So it's a strong emphasis in the Maimon. And as they put in the Yiddish, Ergetzvu in Yiddish, anywhere that Bilam could find Echsoden in a singular Jew, that was enough opening for him to get his klala in. And he couldn't. is a raya that everything that Bilam is saying, that's going to be the theme of the Maimon, what this means, Baruchni is. Mereish, Ovis, and Imois, what does it mean? So this is shaykhs to every yid. And another raya he brings. What's another raya? That was shaykhs to the Ovis is shaykhs to every yid. Bottom of the page there, page Shin, give a pasha to raya. From every day. He's not finished with the rayas. He's just hammering this home over every possible protest or resistance. Simple raya. Yeah, there's a mind here, nice.
Like every yid says, nothing. Remembering the obvious.
Every yid says Elikei Avram, like Yitzchak. He refers to the obvious as the obvious of every single Jew. Every yid says Shemoneh Esrei. Could say Shemoneh Esrei. It's talking to him. It's said for him. He says it. And he's describing the Eibishter as Elikei Avram and Elikei Yitzchak. The Rebbe is teaching that it means that he has a shaykhus to that. He's a child of Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov, and all their in Yonim are invested in him. In the Rebbe's words, even a kal shebakal mepachim shebepchusim, the light of the light and the least of the least. He's not finished yet. This is not just bekoyach and potential, but bepoyel. How is it bepoyel? Next ayah, top of the page from Tanya, the opening introductory pasuk to Tanya. And what is it? It's very near. Why is it very near? Explains the Alter Rebbe. It's very near to every yid be able to become Torah and mitzvahs and be a Benyani. That's the thing point here. What's the whole answer of Tanya? Because we inherit this from the others. There's the innate instinctual love that every Jew has, which includes, he hastens to add, as the Alter Rebbe does in Tanya, includes also Yirat Chilu, not just do mitzvahs, but not sin, that every Jew inherits. So much so, the Yiddishkeit, Torah mitzvahs, is not just accessible, but Korav Ma'od, even Bilvavcha. Or rather, not only Bilvavcha, Rachman the Liber Boy, that Hashem, the All Merciful One, wants the heart. Famous quote from the Gemara, Sanhedrin. The context there, Taka, is, if I'm not mistaken, why the halacha was like one of the Amberoyim, because Rachman the Liber Boy, even on scholarship, he was less, but he served the Eibishter with his heart. Akoponim, not only with the heart, but beficha. So in the heart, one thing a Jew feels, everybody, has a Jewish heart. That's also a big chiddush. Everybody does, but not only that, beficha, balasoisa, all to say, shemizeh muchach, he concludes this is base that the inyan of Reish Surim, which we're going to explain, and Mikvois Ashereno is shaykh to every year, not just in some deep in the bowels of his neshama, but in the gear to him, practical and accessible, all the way to to understand all of this, now started Eis Gimel. So we learned the first part of Eis Gimel. Did we? We did. So we should summarize it again, I think. So let's summarize the beginning of Eis Gimel. So what's the shayresh of Yisrael Lamata is Yisrael Lamayla. Let's establish that. What level is Yisrael above? What's that level? That's invested in every yid to start with. Zod Atzilus. That's Yisrael de Le'ela. The supernal Israel is Zod Atzilus. Again, the Adam Shalakise. Kise is in Bria, the Adam that sits upon the throne, the supernal man, Yisrael de Le'ela, that's Zod Atzilus. All right, who can tell me this? This number 600,000. All Bnei Yisrael are rooted in 600,000 neshamas klolius, and each neshama klolius also has 600,000 neshamas protius, which is a lot of neshamas. Where does this number come from? Why is this number hard and fast? He says, La yigra olav la yosef. Can't add and can't subtract. And the great numbers of Yidden that are more than 600,000 that we just said, they are all branches. So where does this number come from? What's the arithmetic here, the math? It's right after the square brackets. So we have 6. So how do we get from 6 middas to 600,000?
Each midah has all the 10.
Number one, each midah is all 10. So now we've got 60. So how do we get from 60 to 600,000?
To the power of 10.
To the power, why do we go to the power of 5? Because, yeah, because the middas come from Bina, and Bina is Hey Ilah, the 5 Hey Gvuras, the 5 Gvuras which break up and develop the Nekud of Chachma. So Zoh, the middas come from Bina. As we know, the middas are not born from Chachma. Middas are born from a developed understanding of the idea. That's where an emotion is born, not from an intuitive grasp, but from a detailed and analytical appreciation of the subject that can engender, depending on the nature of the subject, a love for, an attraction, or awe. So that's Bina, that's the breakdown, that's the Hey Gvuras. The Gvuras I mentioned, we are also reflected in the 5 organs of speech, which break down the simple sound into articulated words and sounds. So that's therefore 60, what do you say, factorial 5 times 10. 60 times 10, then times 10, 5 times. Do the math, is 600,000. Conclusion. So let's now pick up the text now from the last few words, last few lines of this ois by the number 23 in the text. Yeah? So what's the praise here? So he's saying, I see him. Who's the him? Him is Yisrael. Yisrael is Zod Atzilus. That's where every Yid is rooted. Rooted means not the ultimate root. That's where Yisrael emerges. That's where Yidden emerge with the different middas, etc. That's what in their individual characteristics. And he says, but what's their shoylish? The shoylish is Surim Gvois, the mountains and the valleys, the Ovas and the Emois, Chochma and Bina. This is the story that he's relating here. Interesting to use his language. The story of the praise of the mile of Zoh. That what's Zoh, the middas, where do they come from? From the mountains and the valleys, the kois we said earlier, from the Medrash and the Zoyar, al oves v'imois. The oves are the tzurim, the peaks, the mountains. Also means a rock. And the imois are the hills. Sheheim chochmo bina. Shnikroim aveim, which are called, as we all know, father and mother. Chochma is the nekuda, the seed, and bina is the mother which develops and nurtures the seed, developing the child, developing the concept. Then as a result of the concept developed, this I'm talking the parallel, but nefesh adam, then Zoh, emotions are born. And this is all rooted l'mayla. Let's stop for a moment and think. So what does this mean, l'mayla? Our esteemed McGill student is sitting right here. She says, it's beautiful. I want to understand this. I understand this kind of the way you're talking about lamata within a person. He understands the human sight, the breakup of the faculties of the soul, chokhmah, bin, emotion. What does it mean, Lamaila?
You understand the person, that's just a reflective of what's above.
It's a reflective, correct. So a reflective of what exactly? So what does it mean? Can you tell me what it means, Lamaila? So now apply this Lamaila. I could just continue this. We are the model Lamata, true, for the way it is Lamaila. So what understanding are you having about Lamaila? First of all, the simple level, indeed, exactly this. God has manifested divine intelligence, divine emotions. That's the simple thing. There's the divine intelligence. Where is that? Torah, the wisdom in Torah. Study Torah, and we are engaging and understanding God's wisdom, which is at once graspable and simultaneously infinite. As you will discover, dear friends, as you learn any concept in Torah, it's endless depth. So it's chachma, but it's bligbul chachma. Where is God's emotions? Well, first of all, throughout, depending on our behavior, God responds in kind. Sometimes it's chesed, sometimes it's gvura. God relates to us, expressing emotions. God's anger, God's joyous. But before that, even creation itself is the result of chesed, gvura, tiferes. There's elements in creation. There's love in creation. There's fury, gvura in creation, fire. There's tiferes, beauty, and there's tenderness. All the way. 6 days of creation. Each day of creation, God employs another midah, producing that kind of creation, as explained in Chassidus. So that's where you see it, in creation. That's the simple answer to what it means. Yeah, the Eibush has chosen, and then he's going to ask you, well, why would God do this? Why would an infinite God, surely he is, and beyond, express himself through this highly defined structure that we possess, that defines us? What's the one-word answer, three-word answer to that?
We have a relationship with him.
Because he wants a relationship with us, and we can have one with him. That's the point. You can't have a relationship with something if you share nothing in common. The more you share in common, the more the relationship. Just as a caveat there, sharing in common also includes an even deeper way. What I'm missing, you have, but I need it. It still completes me. If it doesn't complete me, then it's something extraneous. That's why husband and wife share in common, but one has what the other doesn't, but it's missing within me. It's missing because we're all a reflection of the 10 spheres, but you have that in a way I don't have that. All right, I was going to get to the next level, which is really the critical one, and that is the whole the SS spheres and the way they emerge. It is, in retrospect, because that's how Hashem wanted, designed it, and produced it, the logical way, the empirically logical way that infinite manifests in structure. I say empirically logical because here we now live in this world where it's made, these are the rules of nature. What's logic? Logic means that that's how it's going to be. Why should it be this way? It's another question. No answer to that. But now that it is, it's logical. Gravity is logical because we observed it and becomes a law. Comes a law, that's logic, is a law of consistent behavior. This will produce that. That's what logic means. So the 10 spheres are the logical way. It's all because he once did it b'tachtonim. He had this desire for tachten, to make a tachten, and tachten should have structure and logic to it. So the logic is the SS spheres. I'm not going to elaborate now, but just start the process. The first level is chokhmah. The first level of divine, what's chokhmah? Bittul. What bittul? that this is the first level of otherness. So what God desires is a relationship with otherness. In its experience of the truth of God is totally nullified. The first revelation. And that's why it works in Seichel. Before you can develop the Seichel, you got to discover the idea. It all works this way, per force, and it doesn't work any other way. This is how ideas are born. And why ideas? Because it's the highest faculty within the human creativity and the human makeup. There's the Chachma that goes to Bin and then Das. This is the natural evolutionary process in order to end up with highly defined structure at the end of the day. Malchus, Maisa, Machshava Dibur, Maisa. It's got to go through this process. We talk about this much more, think about this much more, but that's when we're learning about the Spheres Lamaila. So we're all parallel to us. We relate to it. That's the point. But it's not, it's more than just Hashem manifesting intellect and emotion. This is the way that system, that Tachten is produced. It's the logical progression of Chochmah to Bina, then Das. Since the end result is Tachten, Maisa B'Poel, this physical world, this is a result of that process. It's intrinsic to it. You need to have every element. And before that, you have to have Kesen, Rotzen, Taina. All these levels are like Mukhrach. They all must be after the fact. Of course, Hashem could produce the Tachten without this system or any system. It's all true. But his whole desire is a relationship that we should mirror and have within ourselves. So now it's quote unquote mukhrach. It has to be this way to produce this result. By choice. But now that the choice is, this is the way life works. There's no other way. To get to Maisa B'Poel, action, Tachten, which is what he wants, it's a process that starts with the whole Ishtamshus. To put this in different words. Hashem's desire ultimately is relationship with us. Here's the way we are. To have a relationship with us, he's got to manifest all of these properties, which means that every darga that Chassidus mentions has to have a parallel in the Nefesh Adam in our world. Otherwise, there's no point for it. We have to have an appreciation of it, of how it's integral to our world and our makeup, because that's the only reason he manifested all of this, because he wants a relationship with us. That's the point of understanding all of this. Okay, so let's go. What are we said this now? Yeah, the Yuvan. Yeah, guys. Okay, so the second paragraph of Ois Gimel. Yuvan, beautiful friends, beautiful asbara coming now in Chachma and in Bina. That's the Rosh Surim and the voice that every Neshama, every Yid is rooted in and defines him. So what's Chachma and Bina? By understanding how it is down here. That's our starting point. In order to produce emotions of the heart, it has to begin with a Nekuda. And the Nekuda is, again, we're talking about an emotion towards something that you would never encountered before. You don't need Nekudas Haskola to love your parents. It's not the marshal here. The marshal is something that you've not encountered. And in order to have a love or an awe for that, it has to begin with the Nekudas Haskola. And begin with this epiphany of the value of this thing. That means in relationships, even it's the same. It has to click. The relationship has to click before anything works. And that's very, very almost emotional level completely, but it's not. It's here. You haven't got emotionally involved yet with the person, but there has to be like I get this person. There has to be a click called maybe yeah. I guess that's maybe other words to describe this.
The light bulb got to turn on.
Yeah, but we're not talking now in seichel, in a relationship, and you're dating while you marry this person. Either this click happens or it doesn't. That's the kudas hachacham. And you're waiting, it may happen the first date, second date, it could take a little slower, but fortunately, it's the one if it happens right away. That's the God of mile. So that's an emotional nekudas hachachma, but it's not so really emotional because again, you have not got entangled with this person emotionally yet. It's an awareness, and that's the beginning of every relationship, to something that's novel, that's not a given, that like parents. So it has to start with nekudas haskola. She'ina chachma v'lachnis etzorich liyis tzrachvos v'spashtus havon v'asoga. And then you have to have an appreciation. It can't just be clicks. Now you have to appreciate the person. That is the expansion, the spashtus, the spreading. Avona v'asoga, shunyan habina. That's bina. Vayidei yichud shneim, and the two of them. Now you need two of them in their yichud. This is an important nekuda, which we'll develop tomorrow more Be'ez Hashem. Which is, why can't just chachma give way to bina? It's the end of them, end of chachma. Now it's been, no. Has to be Shu'inyan Nekuda Beichala. The Zohar speaks of a Nekuda, the point in the chamber. The point in the chamber. What's this Nekuda Beichala? That is Chachma within Bina. If you lose sight of that original Nekuda Sachachma, then the Bina, the analysis can be awry, can go all over the place, and it's devoid. It becomes technical. And it's devoid, and it can go also off. Devoid of the original vision, the original connection. On a simple level, a person has a business idea. Boom, kudas hachachma. Then he develops it. He can develop and get so lost in the development, you forget the original idea, and then it's not going to be faithful to it and not produce the results. So there has to be the kudas hachachma. That bina does not get a life of its own, building and adding components. Unfaithful, perhaps, inevitably, if the nekudas hachachma vision isn't maintained, then it'll be a structure that will, in the end, collapse. It's got to be faithful to the original vision. Okay, more about this, Be'ez Hashem, we'll have time tomorrow. Let's just conclude that Nasa Yilodas Hamidus, it's there, the union of Chachma bin a father and mother, that the emotions are born, and we'll continue that, Be'ez Hashem, tomorrow.